Welcome to Voices of Care, real stories to inspire, uplift, and unite caregivers with hosts Maggie Linton and Carl Powell. Enjoy the conversation.
Welcome to Voices of Care. I'm your host, Carl Powell, here with my co-host, Maggie Linton, and our special guest, Priscilla Baldwin. Let's enjoy our conversation. Priscilla, welcome to Voices of Care podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. As we start out, let's just generally let our listeners know about you and talk about your journey up to this point, because you have really been busy as a caregiver
I
and teaching
have,
others how to be that too.
right. So my journey began with taking care of my father. He had dementia. He lived to be 96 years old. And during that time, I was working full time. I had started my business in 2003 as a homemaker companion service and working full time at a local mental health facility, working with at youth risk children and special needs, going out into the community and teaching behavior modification and conflict resolution. So whatever, and working with case managers. So whatever that target behavior is, we went out into the community to teach them socialization, living independent. So I was doing that as my full-time job and trying to start my business as well. So in the process of taking care of the individuals that I was assigned with my full-time job, for my business, I worked in the homes I started out with teachers that had, that were caring for their spouses or their parents. And when they had teacher parent conference, they would call me in to go to the house to take care of their children. I mean, their parent while they were doing the teacher parent conference. So that's how I started with trying to run the business, trying to take care of the kids, trying to do the full, the full-time job. So it started merging into, looking like a big blob. And when I had spoke to Carl, he was talking about the sandwich generation, and that's exactly where I was at that time.
You were a double decker. You weren't just one sandwich. You were a double decker
Yeah.
sandwich.
I was getting ready to say you were the whole meal.
Yeah. So, and at that time, my kids were in middle school, high school. They're grown now with their own children. But
Mhm.
as we had spoken, Carl, I was telling you about when you're caring for other individuals and with starting the business up, I was not really familiar with the lingo of healthcare. I was on the business side of it, where I would go in, we would do meal preparations, we would do light housekeeping, we would do those type of things, making sure that they were having nutritious meals and everything. So I was on the business aspect of it because I was caring for that individual. I wasn't on the back end of that because on the back end of that, you have the caregivers that's going and taking them to the doctor, make sure the appointments and all of that. And what I learned during that process was, and I equate this to, but when a person is driving a car and you're the mechanics of it or just the business part of it, you're the driver. So you have tunnel vision. You can only see so far, right? Because you have that tunnel vision and you can only see as far as the windshield. So when my father got sick, I left the front seat and was in the back seat of the car. The person that sits in the back seat of the car has a broader, wider view than the person that's driving the car, because I can see more in the back than you actually see because you're limited in your vision, right? So when I began to sit in the back seat of the car, taking care of my dad, I had to learn the mechanics of how things worked as in the healthcare system, the lingo, the speaking to the doctors, talking to the receptionists, talking to the nurses, talking to the gatekeepers, because there's people that keep the gates and allow certain people to come in. And so I had to learn how to navigate that for myself as well as my dad. And we're talking advocating for our individuals, right? And so I had to advocate for him. With my dad, his heart would stop. He had issues with his blood. So with them having to go in and just trying to find out where's the blood going, we had to be introduced to an oncologist, which, didn't know anything about that, what that looks like, right? And then we had to be introduced to another doctor because my dad had prostate cancer. And in the midst of that, it's like all of these things are piling up, And the one thing that the doctor did say, because my daddy was older, he said that he would probably transition before the disease, really gets to that point, right? So in my journey with the dementia, and even with the book, the first book that we wrote, it's a part of my personal journey as well as my professional journey with my dad. My dad, me and Carl laughed about this. My dad was a small man, very small, with a very billowing voice, right? And in the state of Florida, for driver's license, there is no age restriction as of 2006. My dad transitioned 2006. So there was no age restriction. And I'm thinking, my dad was born in 1909. So when we get there, you're going to really realize, you're going to call this for what it is. So we get to the DMV and we're standing outside. The longest, it's in a rural area. And it's in Pensacola, but it's in a rural area of Pensacola. So we're standing outside and I'm thinking the line is long and he's going to get tired, right? He's going to get tired. And I said, but at any time we can leave because this line is long. He was like, no. And so I said, okay, by the time we get inside, I'm like, you sure? You sure that you're not tired? Because we've been standing out there in the hot sun, if you're ready to go, we can go. No. And so we sit there. And I don't know where y'all are, but in that DMV, it's loud. The people are talking and it's, the volume in the place is really loud. And we sit there and they finally call my dad over and she gets all the paper information and she tells him to step over to look at for the vision. And my dad's billowing voice is, hey, and all of a sudden everybody in the DMV gets really quiet. And I'm like, what is going on? He's calling out the lines. And she tells him, she says, now go to the next line. He goes to the next line and it's F, B, it's loud. And everybody's got this hush over in the lobby. And she says, and I say, okay, this is the part I'm waiting for. She's going to tell him, that he didn't pass or whatever. And then I'm practicing while I'm sitting in the lobby, how to console him, to tell him, it's okay. I'm practicing that. And she says, Mr. Crenshaw, step over so you can take your picture. I'm like, and like, I didn't know, you know what I'm saying? I didn't know that there was not an age restriction. So he gets his license and he's ready to take off in the parking lot. And I was able to tell him, no. We're gonna, you had a long day, so I'm gonna just drive and you know. We're just going to go home and you could drive some other time. So I think my dad
Still
had,
driving at that point, Priscilla?
he was still driving. They issued those licenses and he was in his 90s. So that at that point where we were, there was no age restriction at Florida. There was none. That's why she still issued the driver's license. So with that being said, I think it was 2 months down the road, my cousin came from Georgia and she called me and she said, you need to take those car keys from your dad. She said, because he gonna hurt somebody or somebody gonna hurt him. So for me, it was okay. I don't want nobody to hurt my father and I don't want him to hurt anybody. So I took the keys and as I was talking to Carl, I remembered the lights went out of his eyes. But if I had known at that point that there is a facility, a part of West Florida Hospital in Pensacola, that it's a memory disorder clinic, and they would have tested him to see if, he's able to drive and, all the different assessments that needed to be done, right? So if they had have took the keys, it would have been more acceptable to him instead of me taking the keys, because I was looking at it as a safety issue. But my dad was looking at it as an independent. He was independent, and I took that away when I took the keys.
Was
You know,
he still living by himself at that point? Or was he
we
living with
still
you?
we were we were living with him, he said, but he was
Telling how you look at it, you know?
yeah, it depends on who you ask, you know. So he lived a good life. I mean, he was 96. He didn't start having dementia until the latter part of the 90s, right?
Wow,
So
that's blessing it within itself.
yeah, he had good health. He walked 2 and 3 miles a day, so he was always walking. He was always socialized. He always had people coming to check on him and everything. But it was the little slips that you see. It was the little things, like he normally wouldn't do that, or he normally wouldn't say that, or, and it was those things. And I remember one time we were at the hospital with him, and my children, I named my children their names. My daddy named them a whole different name, and they answered to it. Because my son Derek, he was Daryl, and then Darius was another name. And the thing about it is, they would answer to the name that he called them, right? We were at the hospital. We had been there all day, me and my daughter, and he didn't know us at all. So we were waiting for a procedure to be done or something like that. And we sat there with him, and he didn't know us. My son and his friend, they walk into the room. His face lights up and he says, "Hey, I'm glad to see you." And I said, "You know them?" He looks at me. He said, "You don't?" And I said,
There are those lucid times, you know?
there's a very lucid time. And I'm like, we've been sitting here. I was thinking, we've been sitting here all day. You don't even know us. But they walk into the room, your whole face lights up, and you're like, "Hey," and I'm thinking, oh my God. So it's those, and I call those golden moments, that when you're able to just step into that moment with them and just relish that, because that light fades really quickly, So if you can just stand there for however many minutes, even if you're blessed with a whole day of them remembering certain things or remembering you, or just that aspect of who they were, stand in that moment, because that door closes and that window closes really, really fast.
We
You
had a
know,
guest
throughout,
who was on who his father had woken up for 2 days after having dementia for 2 years straight through. For the very end of life, for 2 days, he came back and he was perfectly normal. What I found so astounding in the whole transaction was the father knew everything that happened while he was in the demented state. He knew what colleges his grandchildren were going to, even though they signed up for that school while he was in dementia. So what I learned from that was I always thought that what I said to my mother didn't matter because she's not going to remember this anyhow. And what I learned in that moment is maybe she really did remember that. And so we have to be a little bit more careful about how we approach. They're never going to remember that anyhow. And like you said, really tune in on those beautiful moments that we're going those golden nuggets that we're going to be able to hold on to when the journey's over.
Yeah.
when did you realize that you had to help other people walk along the same journey that you are? Because there are so many people who are
Mm.
lost and have no hope or any faith at all about how to take the journey with someone who's dealing with dementia.
I think what helped me with my journey with my dad is my ex-husband had a really good relationship with my father, and he would come over on his lunch breaks and he would basically tell me, can you trust me for 30 minutes? And for me, that was like, what? Because I'm the only child for my parents. And I don't have siblings to say, we need to discuss this, this, and this. Everything falls on me. I'm the one that has to make the decision. So, being that they had a great relationship and him coming over and said, can you trust me for 30 minutes? Because with some caregivers and myself at the time, I thought nobody could take care of my dad like I can. There's nobody qualified to take care of my father, right? So when we pivot from that mindset that nobody can take care of him like me, and you're probably right, not to the extent that you're going to go, but you have to also realize that you have to delegate to other people, because if not, you're going to go down fast. And we know that caregivers, usually 35% of the percentile with the statistics that I've seen, they will pass before the person that they're taking care of, because they're not going to doctor's appointments, because they're always at the doctor. They're not taking care of themselves. They're not doing the self-care that they need. They're not resting and getting enough, sleep. They're not eating properly, depending on if that person is up and down all night. If you have a sundowner, if you have a wanderer, those things have to be taken in consideration as well, because you have to maintain your physical health in order to take care of somebody else. So you can't self-neglect in order to take care of somebody else. So that was a big help with me, with him stepping in and that 30 minutes turned to an hour, sometimes 2 hours. But he would do it 3 days a week so that I could make phone calls, attend to parent-teacher conference, go to Walmart and actually shop and not just throw stuff in there and just, I gotta hurry up. I gotta get back because I gotta do A, B, C, D. And the other thing that he taught me, he's like, breathe. And, we forget to breathe because we're going from A, B, C, D. We're going straight. We're going headlong, and we're trying to accomplish all these things, but we're forgetting to breathe. So once we breathe and we do that breath work, then that helps regulate our nervous system, which helps us to be grounded, and it helps you not to have that brain fog, but to be clear in your decisions that you're making.
It's the
Well,
beauty of the pause. It's the beauty of the pause, because so often in life we don't take that pause. We don't give ourselves the grace to pause, take that breath, and now make my decision, because we think our decision is utmostly the most important thing in the whole world at that moment.
Right.
And it's not. It really is not. The pause, the beauty is in the pause because we
Yeah.
learn so much in the pause.
Yeah.
And as you're starting out, really starting the journey and looking for agencies and things like that, you feel like you can't stop until you get every single bit of information at the time to answer all your questions immediately. And it does take time, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does. Yeah.
And
And like you said before, we don't even know the resources that are out there. That's one of the things with caregiving when you're thrown into it is you have no idea that there are resources. You just don't know where they are. And that's why through Voices of Care, I'm really trying to teach people that there are resources and touch each other, talk to other caregivers because other caregivers have secrets that you don't know. And that's the
Right.
beauty of collaborating with caregivers.
and so how did you find the help that you needed, other than your former husband, because he turned out to be the real friend that you needed at that point, didn't he?
Yeah. And family members too that would come and that would help, or people that worked in the health field, or somebody that knew somebody. So we started out, like you said, from we the inside, and we worked our way out to, because I had friends that were nurses that would say, hey, you need to check this out. Or hey, the ins and outs of what you're looking for, how to, the verbiage that you need to know. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times we know what we're trying to say, but because the verbiage is not correct, the other person, that's why communication is so important. Even when we go to different industries, we should try to know a little of the verbiage, because I know what I'm thinking in my head, how I process it and how I equate it or communicate it. It may come out totally opposite, and you may process it like, what is she talking about? But I know what I'm trying to talk to you about. But it's not. It's the miscommunication and the way that you're processing, and the way that I'm receiving what you're saying and you processing what I'm saying, so that we could, meet halfway or just understand,
The fact that you had worked with people who had been disabled or, need some extra help really put you ahead of so many people who were starting on the ground floor with someone with dementia. So, how did you use that knowledge to at least kind of find the right pathways?
well, with some of the patients that I was with, I did take them to the doctor. So I knew how some of the healthcare worked with, going to the doctor and making sure that, that what is what I'm looking for? That the service authorization has been given, with dealing with the different insurance companies, what they will pay for, what they won't pay for. It helped a lot in that aspect, So it also helped too with the community resources. And that
Just
helped.
you knew there was a lot of help out there, but again, just
Just
going
knowing
through the gauntlet to find
yeah,
out where it was.
how to
Yeah.
navigate it,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so many people that do work in the healthcare field that are gatekeepers. They're not going to tell you, and it's like you're running around in circles when you could have told me that a while ago, and I could have made the adjustments to do what I needed to do, So we can get rid of the gatekeepers, you
Mm.
know, we could have access to, the different resources, what you need to do and how you need to do it, who, you need to talk to this person.
Yeah,
So,
very true.
yeah.
Very true. So
What
talk about,
encouraged you to write your book?
yeah.
We were going to
What,
ask the same question.
I was
We
going to
know
say,
each
tell
other
me
too
about the
well. We
book,
know each other
because
too well.
yeah,
the book opens a lot of doors for other people.
Caregiving 101 It's Caregiving 101, huh? It's for the novice. It's for the family member that has no health care, nothing. The book teaches about home safety, because a lot of times when we used to go into the home, when I owned my business, we used to go into the home and do home assessments where we would look to see if the bathroom is the most dangerous place for somebody that's elderly or disabled. So we would look to see if you had grab bars, if you had the non-slip mats in there, the things that you needed in the bathroom. So a lot of times the older and disabled need the grab bars. They need the non-slip. Or if your person can no longer get in the tub, they need a shower chair. So we would go in and do the assessments and tell the family, what you need in order for this to be a safe home. For the throw rugs, there's a reason why they're called throw rugs, because our elderly people will shuffle their feet. They won't pick them up. And that could be because they're not physically able to pick their legs up, or there's a disability with the legs. So with the throw rugs, you want to go in and you want to tape them down. That's that reversible tape, that's two-sided tape where you can, put it on the rug and then put it down so that it's,
It
it's
doesn't move.
right. And
Right.
for the cords, extension cords, because a lot of times people got extension cords all over the place. You want to take those down so that they won't get pushed over with the walker or whatever, that they're secure with the extension cords. So you can do the home assessment to make sure that the house is, elderly friendly. We're not going to say that you're going to childproof it, because they're not children. You're just going to make sure that it's safe for them to be in the home. And there's other little things in the book that talks about triggers. There's a chapter on role reversal, because you now are the caregiver, but the individual that you're caring for, it could be your husband, it could be a sibling, could be your parents, but in the lenses of the way that that person views you has not changed. For with my daddy, I'm always his little girl. So at that point, I think I was 40 something years old, 40 something. And in his eyes, he's still a parent and I'm still a child. So you have to navigate that, still hold the space, because you're going to always be whatever, that's my sister, she taking care of me. That's my wife, but the roles are reversal, but you have to tread lightly with the role reversal, and everything is done with dignity and respect. So you just have to be aware of how to navigate that.
Well, once again, give the title of the book and where can people find more?
It's Caregiving 101, huh?
Huh?
And it's on Amazon.
Right. Okay. Now, do you have a website or anything like that where people
We're
can get in touch
building,
with
but
you?
you can get in contact with me on my email address, because our website is being built, and it's Priscilla, PriscillaBa50 @gmail.com.
All right. Sounds
Why don't
good.
you
Give
tell
it
us
one
about your
more
workshop
time.
before you go? I know you're going to do a workshop, so I don't want to miss the workshop that you're going to be giving. Is it next month?
You mean in a couple of days?
Is it
Yeah.
a couple of days?
It's June the 9th.
What's
And
next
it's,
month?
Oh, that's my sister's birthday.
yeah, it's June 9th, and it's going to be in Montgomery, Alabama. And
Oh,
it's going to be at E.L. Lauer Library. And the workshop is about caregiving style assessment. And the assessment is where we look at, a lot of times people think, well, I'm a caregiver and this is what, this is how I do it. But the caregiving style assessment this assessment tells you what type of caregiver you are. And it has like, depending on how you score, because I did my score last night. So it's a multi dominant. I'm a nurturer, I'm an advocate, I'm a companion, and I am a stabilizer. So those are my dominant caregiving styles. My secondary or my active one is harmonizer. So there's different layers to your caregiving style. And each style tells you where you are as far as your strengths. Some people may have a stress style. And with that, we also have a renewal. And how do you renew yourself? How do you restore yourself? What do you do? Do you do prayer? Do you do meditation? Do you just sit in silence? How do you restore the things that you give out? Because a lot of times as caregivers, we deplete our cup, and we don't have somebody else to pour into us to help us to restore, to revive, to keep us grounded. What do you do to keep yourself grounded? What does that look like for you? So that's what that workshop is about. It's to help you get to know your style and why you do what you do. It's not based on your personality. It's based on the things that you do, how you feel, what your beliefs are, how you express yourself, how do you communicate. So that's what that workshop's about.
It sounds like it's a workshop for a lot of people beyond the point of being caregivers. Because, I mean, you named some things there that a lot of people, as they go toward being a caregiver, they sometimes have a resentment toward the person that they're having to care for because it may just drop into their laps. You being an only child, there wasn't a sister or a brother that you could depend on.
Right.
It looked at you, and then that in turn dribbles down to your kids and even your ex-husband. It was
Right.
all you were the main person that it was going toward. And a lot of people wind up being, I won't say the victim, but the person who is leaned on, even though there may be others to go toward, or they could be in the position that you are as being the only one, or the starting point anyway.
Right. Yeah, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Sometimes, even though people do have siblings, it's that one person that's going to be the primary caregiver.
Right
And
here.
everybody else has their opinion, but they're
Yeah.
not lending their hand to assist or to come in. I didn't even know what respite was, until I started working with developmental people to know what respite is. And a lot of times for some caregivers, depending on, what type of insurance that you do have, that's not a service that is available to you that the insurance company is going to pay for. So most of the time, respite care is of out-of-pocket expense, unless you have long-term or short-term disability, if that person had that, So a lot of people don't know what respite is, or just having somebody come in and just say, you know what, can you just sit with them for a couple of hours so you can go grab a movie or do something, to decompress yourself. Because if not, like you said, if I'm not decompressed, there's resentment. There's a lot of things that's going to go on with me that if it's going on the inside, it's going to show up on the outside on how I take care of you or how I respond to you or all of those things. And so those things have to be taken in consideration as well, that this person needs a break mentally, physically, spiritually. That's how we are. We are 3-dimensional. So we need to step away for refreshing, a renewing, so.
That's so very important. Once again, give your email address and tell us about the June 9th event and the time. And I noticed you said it was going to be at a library. So please give us that information one more time for those who were kind of paying attention and all of a sudden said, boy, I should have had a pencil and a paper with me.
It's going to be June the 9th in Montgomery, Alabama, from 10 to 12 at E.L. Lauer Library. And the address is 2590 Bell Road.
All right. And give us your email address one more time.
The email address is Priscilla, PriscillaBa50@gmail.com.
Okay. That's wonderful.
Well, I'm so glad that I found your book. I was just browsing the internet. I always do that. I browse caregiver sites and just see what other caregivers are doing. Because I want to make sure that I'm up to par. And I looked and I saw your book, and then I thought, well, this was really interesting. But I'm one of those people that just reach out. I don't care. I don't care who you are. I'll send you a message, and just hopefully some people answer and some people don't. But I'm so glad that you did, and I'm so glad that you were able to be here today and to talk about your workshop that's coming up.
Priscilla C. Baldwin, a native of Pensacola, Florida, is a dedicated healthcare professional, educator, author, and advocate for individuals living with dementia, disabilities, and age-related challenges. She is the former CEO of Life Care Companions of Northwest Florida, where she provided home and community-based services to individuals with disabilities, older adults, and clients with dementia. You can email her at priscillaba50@gmail.com.